I need to stop working, man. I need to stop working. Looking at work emails.
You really got one of those little fucking pogs in the back of your phone? Good Lord.
Yeah, I do, man. It's best.
You got a
those
pop
teenage
socket?
girls really. Yeah, they know what they're doing, man. Those teenage girls.
Dude,
Look at that.
Nicole and all the girls have one, man. They swear.
They know what they're doing, man. They know what they're doing.
How do you wirelessly charge your phone?
Why? I don't do that.
I don't have a wireless charger.
You don't have a little
Why would I do that?
$5 key charger that you just throw your shit on and it fucking charges?
It just plugs in.
Yeah, I don't have to do that. Just fucking lay my shit on the thing, it charges. Fuck.
Yeah, but it plugs in.
Why would I do that?
Well, because it's got a plug.
Why would I do that then when I can just lay it on the mat and it charges?
It comes with a free plug-in.
But you got to plug the mat in.
Yeah, but I don't have to keep plugging in and out. I just plug it in one time and it's good. And it's good for my AirPods. It's good for my phone.
Laziness.
I just plug my phone in until it's charged fully, and then I unplug it, and I don't have to plug it back in until
next time that you have to charge your phone. I don't do that.
The next time I go to bed.
Yeah. So I save probably 6 seconds a day doing that.
I knew that was coming. Oh man.
Oh, that's so ridiculous.
Time is money.
No, you know what? I use it more for like my office to where I'm always picking the phone up and down. So I have a charger there. So it's kind of nice where I just sit it on there and it'll charge. I can do work. And then when I go out back or whatever, I'll grab the phone and take off with it.
You don't do any work. You don't work. You don't do
Dude, I've been working my ass off lately, dude. Like fucking work.
No, you ain't working.
Hold on.
So what are we covering this one? We're doing the whole Middle East thing, right? Since it's not very relevant to anybody.
I don't know. I mean, it's more of a distraction, really.
It is. Yeah.
We're supposed to talk about that.
Dude, I can't. No, we'll save it.
Yeah, save it. Dude, I don't know. What you were talking about before, though, I don't see a tie. I don't think.
Save it. Save it for the show. We'll talk about it on the show.
Hey, Roger. Your 6 seconds. Your 6 seconds. Bill Gates can make $2,288. That's how much he makes in 6 seconds. So, man, I feel
look at that. And hey, 6 seconds a day, at least. It's actually probably a minute a day, because my nightstand is actually a stand-up charger, so I just drop it on there. That's it.
See,
but yeah,
time is money.
Yeah, time is money. Not that I do anything important with that time that I save, other than drink.
Hey, we need to start doing small businesses again.
Josh with the ideas. Oh,
yeah, it'd be great if we could like boost some shit. So what happened with the Facebook boosting thing?
I had to resubmit my ID. My ID got rejected because there was a little bit of a glare on it.
So stupid.
what the fuck?
Hold on. Stop. Hang on. Good day and welcome to another episode of Culper's Canteen Cup. Today we're on, episode 33. Again, just want to thank Carlton Zeus for that fantastic intro music. Check him out at Apple Music, www.carltonzeus.com. We're actually, for you YouTube viewers out there, you know, we're carrying on conversation, and so we're just kind of going to dovetail that right into our podcast here. But Josh was talking about our Facebook things. They're really starting to piss me off because it's And I gave Luke, I think we both gave Luke shit, you know, about this a couple months ago when he was talking about publishing rights and this and that. And I wasn't very educated on it, but it's, you know, basically they're held liable for what they publish. And now you got the election season coming up, and now and I think we brought this up a couple times, but we can't even boost our posts anymore because they consider Culper's Canteen Cup and the 14 followers that we have, half of them being overseas, that we were involved in social issues and politics and could sway an election. Okay. So they are giving us a lot more credibility. They clearly are not seeing the chartable stats that I'm seeing on our listeners and our viewers. But what's the latest deal, Josh? So we've been trying to get approval to boost our posts for 2 months now. So where are we at now?
Yeah. So there's a 3-step process, right? So you have to verify your identity, you have to verify an address, and there was one other thing to it, right? So I had to, request that they mail me a code, right? So the little code that it'd be like, oh, we'll text you a code to your phone, then you input it for 2-factor authentication type stuff.
Right.
So I had to wait for them to no shit Facebook from Leno Park, California, to actually snail mail me a code to my address. And so that took a week. And so you put the code in, it's like, okay, now verify your identity. So you've got to submit, some type of federal ID, right? So you got to submit a driver's license, a passport, or there's one other thing on the list. I can't remember what it was. So I submitted my driver's license. First, my driver's license came back and they said, well, it's not Real ID compliant. And it was like, okay. So, and then it was like, I resubmitted it and they're like, well, there's a little bit of a glare on it.
Oh, Jesus.
So I just resubmitted it yesterday. And so we'll see what it comes back with. But apparently between the three of us, we can't figure this out.
This is becoming like an insurance company claim where it's like, hey, the first time, first 3 times they submit, just deny it. Deny it. Just make them do it again. Because I think now they're coming up and I only caught tidbits of this. Maybe you heard more of it, Luke, but it's they're saying like within a certain amount of time before the election, they're not going to allow any new ads to run because there's no time to quote unquote fact check and take it off and whatever. What is that? 10 days you said, Josh?
Yeah. 10 days.
Yeah. I heard that. Well, we'll see. We'll see how that works out for them. As far as like submitting actual political ads, that's not going to stop the manipulation that's going to take place on both sides, on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, the bots and all that thing. We joke about it and everything, but it is out there. It is happening. Was it just this particular post you're trying to boost, or is it boosting in general? It is boosting in general.
Our last 2 posts, they wouldn't allow us to boost because so basically the categories that they label that you have to have identification for and confirmation, yada, 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 it pretty much covers every topic in the fucking world. So I don't know how anybody's boosting anything anymore because they're like social issues, elections, politics, and something else. So okay, so you basically just covered 99% of what's discussed out there. So it just seems to me it's like, heck, if you take a picture of your license and it's got your accurate address that you're claiming that you live at, it seems to me, in this digital world that would be good enough, right?
Now, what will be really interesting is a few days before the election, if they start throttling or just outright not letting the president tweet or make Facebook posts, that will be interesting because if they consider that a political ad. I don't think they will. We'll see. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they just said, well, we got to suspend this account for a few days. It won't surprise me at all.
And at first, again, I was I just didn't know enough about the whole publishing thing or whatever the stuff that you were talking about. Now I'm kind of getting more and more on it because I didn't realize till today when I was listening to, it was one of the news outlets. I think it was Fox News this morning. And I was listening to, I didn't realize the amount of ties to Twitter and the Biden, or is it the Harris administration? I can't remember which one it is, but whatever administration is going to run for the Democrats, they're like, and it's some weird fucking title, man. It's like, the socially acceptable, chief officer, such and such for Twitter, who determines what can and can't be posted. Oh yeah, he's now on the Biden transition team. I was like, what? And then, there's another person there at Facebook that worked, for Kamala Harris before he or she went to that position. And they're like, hey, there are actually 4 or 5 key positions that are leadership positions that are directly tied to Biden and Harris. So now, at first, because I was like, because it's like us, Intel guys, everybody's like, oh, we're spying on everybody. It's like, you can't possibly listen to everything. There's just too much data out there. And so at first, when all this was being said, I'm like, you know what? I get it. They got their algorithms and there are just as many hiccups left and right, across the board. It's probably pretty even compared to the percentage of those folks that use it. But now you start seeing that. I'm just kind of like, man, I don't want to be a black helicopter guy, but it's like, I think there might be a lot to that. And then, like you said, what happens? What's the recourse if you get down within like 3 days and then you just start banning stuff, right? You start banning it. You can file suit and this and that. But after that, the fucking election's over. It's done. Hey, good luck in 2024.
We got some good news for the Canteeners out there, I guess. Well, yeah, good news for the Canteeners since you're first loyal listeners. I think our audience may grow in the future because apparently, everybody heard about Joe Rogan, most popular podcast in the world. Maybe we can get into his offer to host a debate between Trump and Biden later, because that's an interesting topic in and of itself. But I was a big fan of Joe Rogan. I'm on the fence right now, but he signed a huge contract and went over to Spotify. So they own, they kind of own the rights to Joe Rogan publishing his podcast now. So if Joe Rogan, well, the first thing is when he transferred over, they transferred all those podcasts over to Spotify. All these podcasts are still available on iTunes and YouTube. But when they transferred them over to Spotify, they took a few off that are not available on Spotify. I think it was Alex Jones, Gavin McInnes, and there were, I think Jordan Peterson's daughter was on there. They just flat out did not put those on the platform. And that's their right to do that. And I kind of lost a lot of respect for Joe Rogan for not putting that in his contract, that all of my stuff goes on Spotify. And then so you do a little bit more digging as to why that happened, is because Spotify corporate circulated some kind of feel good, study saying, hey, how do you feel about Joe Rogan? A lot of the employees at Spotify said, we're not comfortable with certain content. So they took those few out. So now Joe Rogan, I'm getting to my point about how this is good news for us. He put out a tweet about an hour ago retracting something he said on a Spotify podcast, basically saying, hey, I said this. It wasn't necessarily accurate. It was about the fires in Portland. And he quoted a story, or he said a story he had heard, which he does all the time on his show. And I guess he just got a lot of flack from his new masters. And he put out a tweet apologizing for it. He's never done that before. So now he's a journalist who has to fact check all his stuff, but he's not going to do it. Spotify is. So what people loved about Joe Rogan was, it was a no nonsense. I think everybody kind of related to the guy. He was socially liberal. He was conservative on a lot of issues, big Second Amendment guy. So he was like kind of right there in the middle. That's a voice we could all go to and say, you know what? I don't agree with everything Joe Rogan says, but I'm going to listen to him because he asked some interesting, engaging questions, and there were no holds barred. Now there are, because his corporate masters are forcing him to be more politically correct and be like a journalist, fact check everything. So he's going to start losing listeners.
This is Howard Stern 2.0.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
We've moved platforms from public radio to now the premium services. And that's why Howard Stern went to Sirius XM. And, I get it. The whole, principles and the fundamentals of the Joe Rogan show and what his show is really based on. But, then there's also the side where it's, hey, man, it's a fuck ton of money. How big was that contract? Anybody know?
Oh, it was 30 something million or something like that. It was huge.
So let me go ahead and put it out there for our listeners, which, by the way, we are now on Amazon Podcast. So for the 16 people that actually subscribe to Amazon Music, we are now on Amazon Podcast. I think we're one of the first on there. But I'm just letting you know right now, if somebody offers us $30 million for this show, I will say whatever the fuck you want me to say.
See, Roger stole my thunder there. I was going to say that he's going to start losing listeners, but we can assure our loyal listeners and the ones of the future, we will stay. We're gonna be no holds barred, and we're gonna keep it going until someone offers.
You know what? Maybe
and then all of you could go. No, I'm joking.
Maybe we take donations, right? We take donations, and it's like, hey, you pay us $5, and you get like a 60-second spot. We'll say whatever the fuck you want us to say for like 60 seconds, $5. I'll say whatever you want us to say. I don't care. No shame.
Well,
but we can't do it till January.
If our listener base keeps growing like it's growing, we might get offered a contract in maybe the year 2356, if my numbers are right. We got to stay alive.
After they get done counting the mail-in ballots from this year's election. So yeah, that'll be like 200 years, 300 years, give or take, something like that. Good Lord. You only get so lucky. And so, I did want to bring this up. So there is a public service announcement. So I got a couple of things. So everybody knows that, I talked about it last time I went to Vegas, and, I made the joke that, well, here's the thing. I was out on Fremont Street. I'm now past my 14 days now. Yeah. So everybody can go fuck themselves. You're going to wear a mask, or you're going to die, and, you're going to catch COVID, and you're going to. So I do not know how there are not 5,000 people a day contracting, and then dying in Vegas from COVID-19. I don't fucking get it. And I posted the picture up there to Josh and Luke. So of all the fucking that, and it was kind of a little freaky because that was the first time since this whole thing's happened that I was around a crowd that big. And I actually looked over to my wife and my neighbors like, if we're gonna catch COVID, this is where it fucking happens. And everybody's like, yep, this is it. And so now I'm beyond the 14 days. I'm still here, which is why the YouTubers, you'll see all three of us versus, Luke and Josh, I think they were hoping I was going to catch the vid so they could, suck up some more bandwidth and airtime. But then they quickly realized, yeah, so you can push me out, but then you quickly realize you wouldn't have a producer. But I'm still here. So now I think I thought a lot of it was bullshit to begin with, but it's even bigger than that. But Yale, and I posted this earlier on our Twitter account, Yale did put out some, a public service announcement. So just want to read this out real quick because I know this will pertain to a lot of you. So rimming or any sexual activity that involves putting your mouth on the anus might spread COVID-19. Virus and feces may enter your mouth and potentially cause an infection. Consider pressing pause for now. That is no shit.
Hey,
so your tax dollars, well, I'm assuming they get tax dollars, right? Yale?
Hey, I don't know, but real quick, sorry, Mom. Sorry, Luke's mom. We probably should have prefaced that. Sorry. All right, go ahead.
You already know that when you're listening to the show. I mean, I don't have to worry about it because my mom doesn't listen anymore. And I asked her, I was like, Mom, are you listening to the show? She's like, I don't listen to that trash. I'm like, really, Mom? I'm like, come on, man.
Oh Lord.
So anybody?
I don't know if.
What's that? Go ahead.
So I don't know if Yale receives federal tax dollars, but I know Princeton does, and Princeton knows for a fact now they receive federal tax dollars. You see that 4D chess from the Department of Education?
Yes.
Oh, I love it, dude. I love it. So the Princeton president, because virtue signaling and everything is in vogue right now, and so the Princeton president came out and said that the Princeton is just racism is embedded, within the very fibers of the institution, and so the Department of Education said that's not going to stand. We are not going to allow that, not on our watch. So what we're going to do, Princeton, since it is embedded in your institution by your own admission, you receive federal tax dollars, and discriminating against people based upon their race is against federal law, shockingly enough, right? So for the people out there who don't know that, when they say that, institutional racism within the federal government is actually against the law. There's a law in the books that you cannot discriminate against people because of their race and gender, creed, yada, yada, yada. So the Department of Education is now going to investigate racism at Princeton to ensure that everything is above board and help Princeton root out and clean their house up from the racism that is, by their own admission, embedded within the institution. I saw that and I laughed for like 5 minutes straight.
It was
woke. Absolutely hilarious.
They are so woke.
Absolutely hilarious.
Hey, man.
But Luke,
dude, like I don't know, you might have said we're gonna say it, but that's so all of this masquerading, this social justice and specifically in this case, virtue signaling, that shit has consequences. But let me tell you how this is gonna play out. They're gonna do their investigation. They're gonna say, hey, you better fix your problem, and all it's gonna be is a series of classes that the poor old janitor is going to have to sit through. None of these professors are going to have to sit through it. It's going to be the janitor, the admin people that process paperwork are going to have to sit through stupid classes, about, unconscious bias. Imagine that. And, I can see this making the rounds because I happen to have a very, very good source who sat in an unconscious bias class for a major department of the U.S. government just last week, and some similar things were said. This is a systemic problem within our organization, and it's like, hey, you're going to cast stones at yourself? So, yeah, you might be time for an internal review, So I could see this kind of thing making the rounds. I like the 4D chess aspect of it. Maybe it'll start calming itself down a little bit, but I doubt it.
I don't know. It'll probably make people think twice, but it's akin, and you brought up the point, it's like the departments come out and say our department is, rife with racism. It's like, Mark, how long you been in charge of that department? And are you racist? But it's akin when you go back and you look at it, and you have, Mr. Joseph Biden, who signed the 1994 criminal bill, right? That people have gone back and pointed to. A lot of the social justice warriors have gone back and pointed to, and saying that thing is racist at its very core, right? And you have his vice presidential running mate, Kamala, who enforced that law when she was the attorney general of California, when she put more black guys, black males in prison based on shoddy evidence, dude, that Michael Jackson touched kids. It was like she was locking people up left and right based on that law, right? So not only do you have the guy who wrote the law, you have the lady who enforced the law that people are saying is systemically racist, but I have to vote for them to end systemic racism. You're a fucking clown. You're a fucking clown. That's all you are. All you people voting for Biden out there and Kamala, you're fucking clowns.
I think at this point we can agree that, the Biden campaign is a joke. First of all, we had Barry in office for 8 years. So are they saying that there was no systemic racism for the 8 years, and all of a sudden the last 3 years or 4 years we've got systemic racism?
No, that was when Barry was in office and Joe was the vice president, right? So you have the most powerful and second most powerful people in the free world. They couldn't get anything done because there was this deep racist underbelly to Washington, D.C. that stopped them at every turn. But now when Trump's in office, the deep state is a myth. That's a Q theory. That's a Q conspiracy. That's not real. There's no underbelly in Washington, D.C. that's, trying to protect the establishment. Hey, you're fucking crazy.
And I do vaguely remember that during his first 2 years, they actually had a Democratic control of the Congress, right? So,
yep.
Okay. Yep. Strange how that works. And by the way, back to our Yale thing. So this actually pisses me off a little bit. I didn't realize it was that much. 75.3% of Yale's grant and contract income come from the federal government. That's incredible. So for all you listeners out there, that's where your money is going to. That's where your tax dollars are going to, is studies on rimming and catching, COVID-19. So any of you guys catch Biden's town hall last night?
I did not. I thought it was tonight.
He did the thing with Anderson Cooper, and dude, it's, I wouldn't even, you can just imagine. I think I sent you guys the clip on Twitter or whatever. It's like, I don't even know who knows what the guy's saying. When we talk about his campaign, there's so much hypocrisy. I don't even know where he stands. We're banning fracking. No, we're not banning fracking. We have masks. No, we don't have masks. Well, it says I can't do a mask mandate. I talked to my lawyers. No, we're not going to lock down. We are going to lock down. And then kind of tying this back into the Twitter stuff, it's like they're running campaign ads out there. Like his latest commercial, he literally says, if President Trump had done his job, all the people would still be alive. So take that at face value. If President Trump had done his job, not one person, not one smidgen, right? Not one smidgen, not one person would have died from COVID-19 if he'd have done his job. And then, of course, Biden says, well, when I'm elected, day one, the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to have tests available to everyone with immediate results. So how the fuck does that happen? Right? I don't get it. So it's like you sit there and you're banning, you prevent Culper's Canteen Cup from boosting a post, but he can run Twitter ads like that all fucking day long, man. So I think you might be gaining a supporter there, Luke, for some of the, for some of the whole publishing thing. And I think you got to work some of that out. And I guess I was hoping in my heart of hearts that a strong competitor would come out. But hey, if any of you fucksticks out there are like working for Parler or working with Parler or whatever, they got to get their shit straight. I think we've given it an honest attempt, right? Over the last week. We've given it a fair shot. And, it's, believe it or not, it's a little bit too much of an echo chamber because there's nobody from the left in there. So you're just talking to yourself. But the algorithm, the feeds, they kind of suck. There's no dialogue. That kind of sucks. So it's, I don't know if anybody else has, some influence with Parler out there, but, if you know an exec or something, you might want to get that back to them from Culper's Canteen Cup. So
it's garbage.
Yeah, no, it's total garbage. On to the town hall. So, there's a couple clips where I don't know if Biden knows where he's at, and obviously they're being criticized now because when Trump did his town hall, they asked him some pretty straightforward questions. They're pretty difficult. Of course, everybody was fact checking and this and that. And then with Biden's town hall, they pretty much called it there was a softball question, softball toss. And so check this out. So of the panel of the questions, and this just goes to show you how rigged it is. 16 questions or 16 people, whatever, asked for Biden during that town hall. 13 of them were registered Democrats, Democrat voters, and 3 were independents and Republican. Right? For Trump's, 4 were Republican, and the other 9 were either Democrats, undecided, third party or whatever. It's like, dude, you can't even make this stuff up anymore. I mean, it's like, Luke, how rigged is this whole process with this? I mean, Joe has been in the basement. So now he comes out on TV. I mean, don't we have some expectation of the media to kind of like bring this thing back to the middle and provide some type of objective, view questioning? I mean, and of course, Anderson Cooper, well, I'm moderator, so I can't fact check. Well, you sure fact checked the shit out of Trump when he was doing his on the spot. But today we can't fact check. I mean, isn't there some responsibility there for the media to kind of hold them to a, good Lord, man, get some data out of these guys?
Of course. I tried to mute my little throat clearing right there, producer. Sorry about that. Totally messed up my timing.
All good.
Of course there's a responsibility of the media, but I mean, it's like cognitive dissonance when I am getting more into Twitter, and you do get to see the other side in Twitter, which is far better than Facebook. And it's just light years ahead of Parler. But when, no one wants to address not just what you're talking about, Roger, the media, not really giving it a fair shake. No one wants to address Biden's obvious problems and how obvious it is that this whole thing is just really a charade. That's been my word of the week, is charade. The other night, it wasn't the CNN town hall. It was the other one where he was laying out a few things to a room of 20 or so reporters. And I think Josh was watching at the same time. And I'd had a couple whiskeys in me, and I was flabbergasted when he started to take questions. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but it was very, very obvious. When it was time to take questions, he got out this piece of paper, and he might as well got his reading glasses on. He's reading off the name, even kind of mispronounced one of them. And then Heather Smith, CNN. And then he'd look over and someone would start talking, and he'd look, to where they're actually talking from. And it's like, I mean, is there not going to be just a modicum of scrutiny from a mainstream media source on this guy's fitness to be president of the United States? We all talk about the flip-flop and 47 years in office and stuff like that, but he's a politician, man. All politicians are like that. So he's a politician, so I'm willing to give him a pass on being a politician. What I'm not willing to give him a pass on, and this goes out to the American people who are thinking about voting for Biden, is to search your heart of hearts and wonder, is this guy capable of leading the nation? Is he capable not of just of leading the nation, but of being accountable? That's the whole point behind our system of government and most systems of government in the world, is accountability. If Iran decides to nuke Tel Aviv, there's a system of accountability there, and we know who to blame on that one. It's the same thing with the president. If the president makes a decision, it's his decision. The buck stops here. Joe Biden's not that guy. He is not that guy. Anyone who looks at him and thinks that the buck stops with Joe Biden based on how he acts on camera, you're fooling yourself. It's cognitive dissonance. You're seeing what you want to see. I understand people say the same thing about Trump, but I think the results speak for themselves. Right now, I'll just go off the results. I'm just going to go off the results right now of what Trump has done since he's been in office. And we can talk about that later. We'll talk about one of them in this podcast. But yeah, of course, the media has a responsibility to cover this, but it's just, cover it properly. Walter Cronkite the hell out of it, but they're just not doing it. And I don't see how anybody could say the media is not in the bag for the Democrat Party. It just is. Am I off base here, Josh? You're looking at me like I'm off base. I don't know, man. Are you Biden supporter overnight?
No, man, that's just
Twitter
my
account
face. No, my Parler account, right?
Parler
So
account. There you go.
I had to sacrifice my Parler account to the gods to, you know, just start going off and, you know, saying some crazy leftist stuff to try and get people to, you know, have a discussion, because it is a true echo chamber. It is literally it's a dumpster fire, man. It's hot garbage. But so the CNN town hall, yes, Luke, it was last night. And so I don't know if you guys heard Joe's answer to one of the actual Republicans that they, you know, put up there to ask Joe a question, but it was about farming, right? And about the, you know, when Obama and Biden were in office and the restrictions that they put on farmers with the Clean Water Act and everything like that. So, you know, so I have the clip from it. It's about, it's a couple minutes. I want to play it. And I really want the people out there who are actually considering voting for Joe Biden, and I want you to think about what his cognitive state is right now, right? And so now people are starting to push around, well, Russia, that's Russian disinformation, right? His cognitive state and the fact that he may be in a cognitive decline is, you know, Russian propaganda. Okay, well, if that is, and if the Russians are physically controlling Joe Biden's brain, like, we have bigger problems than we thought we had with the Russians, right? You can say what you want, but just listen to the guy talk, right? So this is Joe Biden. Real quick clip. We'll play it for you.
This is Julie Mosser-Bali from Sacramento, Pennsylvania. She's CFO for her family potato farm, a member of the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau. She's also a Republican who voted for President Trump in 2016. Julie, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you feeling now, Julie?
Good evening. Overregulation puts an extreme burden on small and family-owned farms and is a contributing factor to many farms going out of business. Policies during the Obama administration, such as the rules under the Waters of the U.S. Act, threaten to increase that regulation, as does policies proposed through the Green New Deal, which your climate plan embraces.
No, it doesn't embrace whole new.
Excuse me, if I could finish.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I apologize.
How do you plan to decrease the regulatory burden for farmers and businesses as a whole?
Two ways. Number one, as farmers, by dealing with you being able to put land in land banks, and you get paid to do that, to provide for more open space and provide for the ability of you to be able to be in a position that we are going to pay you for planting certain crops that in fact absorb carbon from the air. That's part of what the plan relates to in terms of agriculture and the environment. But as it relates to, if you're talking about regulation that relates to fertilizer and water tables, that's a different thing. In the United States, in my state of Delaware, we have a $4 billion industry, chicken and poultry, and all the manure, quite frankly, that is a consequence of chickens. And so it's polluting the Chesapeake Bay. What we found out, we've invested a lot of money. We found out you can pelletize this and take out the methane, so you're in a position where you can use that fertilizer without the damage that was being done before. The same way with horse manure and cow manure and pig manure. And we can create thousands of jobs in rural America as a consequence of setting up these small industries within communities. And so that's the way you'll be able to continue to farm without worrying about whether or not you're polluting, and being in a position where you're able to make money by what you do in the transition, as well as be able to grow more. Because if you could take care of it.
What did he
I thought
just say?
Joe said no. I thought Joe said no malarkey. I have no idea what Joe Biden was talking about. All of a sudden, it went back. It went back to, oh yeah, lots of government regulation. Well, I mean, chicken poop.
Well, but dude, okay. So the first thing he said, he's talking about making land banks and things like that. I know a bit about farming, not a lot, but I know a bit. What he described is a program called the crop rotation program. And that has been around, I'm not sure, but it's been around a long time. And so when he's confronted with a question, he's going to fall back on something like the crop rotation program, which already exists and has existed for a long time and does work fairly well. It's subsidized. He's going to go back to that and talk bullshit, and people just listen to him. It's like, oh, yeah. Well, I guess that sounds good. The second part, I don't know what the fuck. Trump's good with riffing on things. Joe Biden is not, dude. That was awful. I mean, the first part, crop rotation program, like, dude, yeah,
Dude,
we have crops, that.
Yeah, they've been rotating crops forever, and the farmers figured out pretty quick. They didn't need the government to tell them, hey man, if you grow like down here over here in North Carolina, Virginia, right, in Georgia, tobacco's big, right? You can't grow tobacco in the same plot of land 2 years in a row because tobacco sucks so much of the nutrients and everything out of the soil. You have to plant something else there, to get it back. So you rotate your tobacco and corn, or your tobacco and sorghum, your tobacco and, wheat, like that. Dude, farmers didn't need the government to tell them to do that. Right. That's an easy win. My favorite part though, is when he starts to interrupt her and she was like, hold up.
Come on, man. You just put the seed in the water and dirt and fuck, the dirt, the water. Come on, man.
You just put the thing, the thing.
And that's what he was trying to do. So the second part of that, and it's a total distraction because obviously the lady is a farmer and saying, okay, you're going to impose all these new regulations and it's going to impact, my ability to farm and feed my family. So what are you going to do about it? And he just totally blows it off, doesn't answer the question. And he tries to provide this analogy with piss poor context. And what he's trying to say, because I'm from the Delmarva Peninsula out there with fucking Frank Perdue land and chickens and all that other shit, is, hey, chickens, that was their crop and they shit all over the place. It was environmentally bad. So they found something else for them to make money off of by selling their, manure to people that made pellets. What the fuck does that got to do with her out in Kansas or wherever the hell she's at? Or Wisconsin or wherever the hell, it's got nothing.
Yeah,
right?
He also didn't address, and this is where, Monday morning quarterbacking easy to do with Joe Biden, but he didn't address the Green New Deal portion, which that's the part he was trying to interrupt. That's what he should have done. If he wants to get, some Republicans over who might be watching that saying, hey, I'm on the fence, really hate Trump, never Trump. He could address that, lie about it, because that's what they all do, and maybe get a couple Republican votes out of that. But instead, he just completely ignored that because he knows he's full of shit. And AOC's right. AOC's right, by the way. Did you hear what she said on that walking interview in D.C.? Yeah.
Yeah. She wants Joe Biden to win solely because that she and the rest of the squad and everybody, they know how susceptible Joe Biden will be to implementing their policies. Right. They're smart, dude. They know what they win regardless, right? Because they either get Joe in there and Joe's going to do whatever they tell him to, right? Because Joe doesn't know what day it is. And he doesn't know. He has to remind people that he's Jill Biden's husband, like he did in that one press conference. And, it's
I'm
like, oh, this is my wife. This is my wife, Jill. Hi, Jill. I'm her husband. You're like,
awful, dude.
I'm telling you, that was my great uncle when he started getting Alzheimer's. Like that was him right there. I'm telling you, people are ignoring it. You said the media, you're right. The media is ignoring it. That is cognitive decline. That is Alzheimer's right out of the gate, man. That is absolutely. And, or they get Kamala Harris 6 months into the administration.
24 months.
Right.
Got to do 24 months. It's the only way she can do 10 years. I'm still waiting for the Biden commercial to where he gives his speech and he's like, I'm Joe Biden and I approve that. Do I approve this message? I'm still waiting for that to air because there's got to be some clips on that.
They recorded that one time. It was like, we got it. We're
going to use that over and over again. And what? I don't really have a problem with Biden just like being out there. I mean, he is who he is. That's the candidate and whatever. And obviously you're trying to polish a turd if you're running his campaign. And who knows? I mean, maybe the polls are right this time and he is leading by double digits in every state, in the union or whatever. I don't think so, but maybe he is. So, I don't necessarily blame him. It goes back to the media and holding them accountable, because it's like, even with the teleprompter thing. And this goes back to what Luke was saying with this whole cognitive dissonance. Like, truly, there cannot be any doubt in 99% of the people's minds that he is not all there. I mean, I think we know. I think any reasonable person, left, right, center, whatever, I think even Antifa or BLM or, your neo-Nazis, I think you could take some money from any part of that spectrum and say, you know what? Joe Biden is not all there. And when Trump was beating him up on the teleprompter, and the whole point of the teleprompter use was that not that he's reading from it or giving a speech from it or whatever, but it's the fact that, hey, it was an open form question. And one, you're having to read the answer off the teleprompter. But in order to do that, that means the question was staged. That means the answer was staged. That's the bigger problem, right? Everybody's focused on the teleprompter. No, much like Donna Brazile did. Remember, this happened in another election. Oh, yeah, everybody forgets about Donna Brazile and Bernie Sanders, right? We forgot about that. So when you're feeding the questions ahead of time, that's the bigger issue. But you specifically take the teleprompter thing, which they're totally, and this is what Democrats are great. They're great at conflating the issues. And so now you've got, who's this D-bag? Ryan Nobles, I think he's from CNN, came out to defend, Joe Biden's teleprompter use, and he put out on Twitter, President Trump speaking tonight from 2 teleprompters, just mocked Joe Biden for using a teleprompter. So, the media is coming to defend Joe Biden, and it's like, I mean, clearly he's smart enough to know that there are obviously differences. So now, well, I'll put it this way. One, it's either intentional or you're just plain ignorant. I don't think all these people are just, straight ignorant. So that leads me to believe that it's intentional. I mean, there is an intentional media bias that's going on. And we're not talking about like QAnon and this and that. We're talking about like your mainstream media that should be generally center with slight variations left or right, depending on, obviously personalities and network and this and that. But you're not seeing that. Anything that Joe does, they come to the defense of. And, it goes again back to Luke's statement. It's like, I haven't heard one person on the left, media wise, like question his cognitive ability. It's like, come on, man, to use this term. Come on, man. Like, you really can't see that this guy is not all upstairs.
Our media, our entire media, whether it's Fox News, whether it's CNN, is complete garbage. It is absolute hot, putrid garbage. It is so biased, either way, that I truly don't believe there's a fix for it other than burning these outlets to the ground, man. Burn CNN to the ground, burn Fox News to the ground, salt the earth with them, and get an actual unbiased report. Like, dude, get the Walter Cronkites back. Here's the news. Here are the facts. Here's what happened. You decide. There is no outlet out there right now that is even remotely close to that. And it's
major outlet.
Not a major outlet, no. And I don't know what the fix is, because it's so hard to break into that, it's so hard to break into that industry. And that's why I don't think you've seen, something come up, because the need is there. And I think a lot of Americans on both sides of the aisle would welcome that. They would welcome an organization, some media outlet that would come out and say, hey, here's what happened, details at 11, here's the details, and you decide, you make up your mind, we don't care. That you won't ever see that again.
I think we can all agree I'm an old fart at the ripe old age of 47, and I've figured out a few things. I'm young enough though to figure out Twitter, Facebook. I hate Instagram. But we got a younger generation coming up. I couldn't hope to I couldn't hope to teach my parents how to use Twitter the same way I do. It's just not in their wheelhouse. Their wheelhouse is Walter Cronkite. Their wheelhouse is being able to turn on the television and get the unvarnished make up your mind. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I agree with you, Josh, and I think you mean figuratively. You listen to YouTube. I think Josh means figuratively burning them to the ground. Maybe he doesn't, but we're going to say he does. I think that, we're a long way from seeing them taken out of the market because, I mean, we're talking billion-dollar industries here. But if you get on Twitter and you find independent journalists, and they're out there on Twitter, and there are some good ones, they cover very specific things. They don't have the capability to cover, the strife going on in Belarus. They don't have the money to do that. But you got guys like Andy Ngo, who's an independent journalist. He's not controlled by anyone, going out and reporting on the riots in Portland, Seattle. He travels around. He has a few people working for him, and all he's doing is reporting actually what's going on. He puts out a few opinion pieces just on Twitter, though, and it's like he's giving the facts. Tim Pool does a pretty good job of just giving the facts. He gives a lot of editorial because he does, 3 hours of podcasting every single day. So he has to fill that with editorial. But I really believe that independent journalists like this are going to start appealing to the younger crowd, people my age and younger, and they're going to start getting more of their news from those types of people. Now, probably what will happen, being the eternal cynic that I am, is that the big corporations will come in and buy those people up, and they'll change over just like Joe Rogan did. They'll figure out a way to appeal to the masses. But I would encourage people, we're always talking about, fact check your stuff, do your due diligence, search Twitter, find you some independent journalists who are covering things, who have some credibility, and start following them too. I'm starting to get a lot more of my actual news from Twitter because I've learned, holy cow, I saw this. And then 6 hours later, I'll see it reported on CNN or Fox News because it's that much quicker. So I'd encourage people to, go out there and take a look at it because, man, holy cow. A lot of these clips from Biden that we see, some of the funny ones that we play, you don't see those played over and over on CNN, Fox News. You don't see those played over and over on their YouTube channels. Where these clips are coming from are independent journalists or people that are recording their TVs. I know you guys have seen those, and they'll catch something and they'll put it out. It's like, I think the paradigm's shifting slowly, but what really freaked me out, Roger, did you see this the other night, was when Newt Gingrich, one of the men who made Fox News what it is, I saw him, Harris Faulkner, Melissa somebody, she's a regular on Fox News, and some other blonde girl. It's one of the most awkward exchanges I've ever seen. Tell us about it.
Basically, I think Harris Faulkner was the moderator, and the one blonde-haired lady, I think we got them a little mixed up. The one blonde lady was a former State Department under Clinton, big-time Democrat or whatever. But basically, Newt Gingrich gets on there, and they ask him whatever the question was, and like the first words out of his mouth was George Soros. And then, dude, it was like, you could tell somebody immediately got in Harris Faulkner's ear. Now, in all fairness, okay, and you have to go back and gargle it because you actually watch it because it's awkward as fuck. Like you're looking like, okay, there is clearly some stuff going on. And I get it. You do have to give a couple seconds to delays and this and that because that's just the way it happens. But, he brings up George Soros. And I think immediately right there, Fox, whoever that producer is, right? Some guy like me sitting in the back talking in Harris's ear is like, I can't remember which one you two said it. We'll go ahead and give Luke the credit since he always wants the credit. But, they want to pull themselves away from being QAnon and being that right side. What's the OAN network, right? Or OAN. So they don't want to be seen as that extreme right side news. So you could tell somebody was immediately in her ear, and then it's almost like they cut mics, and then there's like this 3 or 4 seconds of just like dead silence, and she's clearly still receiving instructions from go, we got shit. Just put water on the stuff, man, and put it in go to commercial. And it's just very, very awkward. And I'm not as big into I get who he is. I know he throws his money out there. I'm not as big into the George Soros conspiracy as everybody else is. I just think there are a lot of players in it, but it's I think you hit something, on the head with the Twitter and the news. But what I would encourage folks out there, and I think this is what separates us three from a lot of other folks that we watch, or have even asked us about how we get our info, is not only do we pull the news and find it on Twitter, but the next thing you do is you go look up the article. You're trying to find out the facts for yourself. And that's what people have to do, is get out of that headline stage, get out of that editorial piece, because I'm a fan of editorials. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Editorials, analysis, I have no problems with that. But the listeners or the readers out there, as they start reading this stuff, you have got to be able, because like you said with Tim Pool, he's got 3 hours that he's got to talk about. So obviously the news itself is going to be a very small portion. And then the rest of that's going to be his thoughts, his editorial, his analysis of it. And so as the reader and the listener, you have got to be able to differentiate and draw that line and distinguish, fact from editorial. Okay, this is the fact, because that's what we do, right? I think that's very similar. I think, and most newscasters and journalists, and we're far from both. I guess Luke might be the closest thing to one that we'd have, but we generally bring out some what we believe to be fact that we read from somewhere, we got somewhere, and then we read that piece, and then from there we go on and provide our opinion, our analysis of it, our editorial. And so for the listeners out there, I mean, that's what you really got to do. And I think I'm with you. I haven't really been a big Twitter guy, but I think over the last couple of days, I mean, I think I actually have like 4 followers, and you might be 2 of them. But so I might need to build that base up a little bit. But I am starting to get more and more news, because the other thing it shows you, and again, you can argue what the base is of Twitter as far as the users and this and that, but it is faster. I mean, you thought the 24-hour news cycle was fast. Twitter's quick. And, I do like the editorials and some of the comments back and forth from that, because I like the original news thing. But, one thing that the editorials do provide is a different aspect or a different perspective at looking at something. Because I do get a lot from that. I'm like, oh, you know what? I never thought about this. I never thought about looking at it from that way or whatever. So I agree with you, man. The Twitter thing is, I know I'm totally off from the George Soros Fox News thing, but, I absolutely agree with you on the Twitter thing.
I don't mind the editorials, right? But I go back to, so I grew up, all 3 of us grew up. I grew up with a newspaper, right? I went down, got the newspaper out of the little newspaper box, which was attached to the pole right under the mailbox every morning. And I could sit down and I could read the news section, and then I could go to the editorial section, right? And the editorial section is where it's like, okay, let's see what people let's see what people think about this. Not what happened, but let's go see what people think about it, because that's where you get that's where you get your opposing viewpoints, and that's where you go, okay, well, I didn't think of that, I didn't think of that, I didn't look at it that way, or whatever, right? But they were separated, and so I can look and say, okay, this is the news, this is what happened, and then this is what a couple of people think about it, and so all we get now is here's what people think about it. Okay, I don't give a shit what you think about it right now. Let me digest it first, and let me figure out what I think about it. And then we can have a discussion on what you think. And we can have that, opposing viewpoint conversation that people just aren't having now, because everything's a fucking editorial, everything.
Right.
Right out of the gate. And so that's where we've lost the editorial piece. Right. And when you talking about things like, the peace deals that happen. It wasn't, hey, here's what happened. Here's why it's significant. It was, well, either here's why it's pretty amazing, which it was, or here's why, to quote Nancy Pelosi, a distraction, right?
Incredible.
Absolutely, right. And so, for us and for millions of others who have spent time in that region of the world fighting, to have a couple of the countries come together and say, hey man, we might not be BFFs yet. We're not going to start posting our Instagram selfies quite yet, but we're at least willing to, put down the sword and, sit down at a table and have some dialogue and actually just talk to each other. It's incredibly significant. And to have people just dismiss it as, well, it's a distraction, or, what does that do for me as an American? Why is that important to me? Why do I care about that? Right? It just absolutely just blows me away. Absolutely blows me away. And I know Luke was to the point where he was like, you know what? I'm going to save this for the podcast. On that whole, like, whoa, how does this help me as an American? and then it wasn't about Israel and UAE or Israel and Bahrain. It was, well, what about Israel and Palestine? Right. It's just, it blew my mind, especially because there's individuals out there who, have literally spent time in that part of the world, fighting. And they even questioned the Serbia Kosovo deal. Right. It was like, I was deployed with you in Kosovo right after the ethnic cleansing stopped. You remember when the United States sent a whole bunch of people over to stop the Muslims from being killed by all the Orthodox Christians from Serbia? You remember that? You remember in Bosnia? I know Roger spent time in Bosnia, right? You remember when we went over and just keep all the Muslims from being killed, and drop down wells and, keep their heads being cut off by Arkansas tigers? Yeah. Now you're like, well, why is that a big deal? Why do I care about that? Well, maybe, motherfucker, because I don't want to spend another year away from my family, for starters, right? And two, maybe it means a bunch of innocent people don't get killed. I don't know. Call me crazy. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I know Luke was pretty fired up about it.
Well,
he's chomping at the bit to say something.
I wanted to do a lot more research. I wanted to do Roger level research on this, but time just got away from me this week. But I do have a little bit of basic knowledge about, the Middle East and what's going on with Israel and Palestine. And, the first bit of research I did, just to make sure I have my dates right, I go and I look at the Israel-Palestine conflict. So let's reel this back to Israel-Palestine before I go into the unfortunate Facebook exchange on Josh's page the other day. So let's talk about Israel and Palestine just for a second, and Israel and the Arab world for just a second. So I go, and the first thing I read is the Israel-Palestine conflict basically started in the mid 20th century. So around 1948, when Israel was established. And I immediately was like, well, this is the wrong source, because this conflict goes back literally thousands of years. And, these accords that have been signed with UAE and Bahrain, and I'm pretty sure there will be other countries signing on to this relatively soon, are called the Abraham Accords. And if you went to Sunday school, you may remember there was a guy named Abraham who had a couple wives and he had a bunch of sons. And basically the split took place between the Arab world and the, I'll say Jewish world, with the two sons, Ishmael and Isaac, I believe. And no, Jacob. I'm sorry, right? Jacob and Esau. That's that right? Whatever. So Ishmael went the Arab way, and that's kind of where the Quran traces their religion kind of back to. They trace it back to Abraham, but it was Abraham's son Ishmael. And I believe the Jews trace it back to Jacob. I think I've got that right. Abraham's family tree. No, I was right the first time. It's Isaac. So Ishmael and Isaac had Jacob and Esau. So it really split back then. And I'm not sure. I'm not too up on my BCE. That's before the Common Era, because we don't say before Christ on this socially correct podcast. I know, right? So I don't know how far back in thousands of years that goes. But so this is a long conflict, and those two brothers did not get along, and it goes all the way back to there. So I believe in, on the study I've done on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is a proxy for the Arab world to gang up on Israel. Always has been, because before the state of Israel was set up, there were multiple places they had a choice to go. I think Uruguay or Paraguay was one of them, where they offered to set up a nation there. I believe there was another place, and they settled on the homeland of Israel. The Palestinians, on the other hand, are not just in that territory where we all know Israel is. They're all over the place, kind of like the Jews were and still are. They're all over the place. The difference is none of these Arab countries are taking the Palestinians in. They don't. If we have any, I'd love to debate with me on this, but I get in Arab countries like Kuwait in specifically Saudi Arabia, Palestinians are second-class citizens. They are not treated well. So I think that's just a smokescreen for the Arab world to gang up on Israel. But so let's get to the meat of this. Josh made a post the other day about, it was after the UAE deal. And that was, I think the UAE deal was after the Kosovo-Serbia thing. And Josh does his duty and posts a positive article. Trump announces a deal between Bahrain and Israel to normalize relations and push for Middle East peace. So one of an acquaintance of Josh said, I'm going to read through this. Not sure what I'm missing, but how does that benefit me as an American? Josh replies back, how does it not? Someone else replies back, a stabilized Middle East benefits the entire world immensely. Now it starts getting good, people. So the original guy said, the problem is between Palestinian, I'm going to read it as he wrote it, is between Palestinian and Israeli. It's not a religious problem. It's a real estate problem. I might lack a little bit of knowledge. If I remember this correctly, the issue started when Europe sent Jews from their countries, feeling bad for what they did to them in World War II, and decided to place them all in one country, then changing the name of the country to another name. Oh God, this guy, man, we could write a book on this. There were no issues or wars between those two faiths prior to the establishment of the new country by force and kicking its people out in mass. So tell me again, why do we care if Bahrain recognizes Israel? I would say the day we, the U.S., assist in having Israel recognize Palestine, then that's an accomplishment worth mentioning. Oh, my God. Okay, there's so many things wrong with that. Roger, we'll get to you. And then one guy put, there were no issues or war between these two faiths prior. LOL. What? I can't. I'm not going to read through this. My plan was to read through all this. This guy was so totally off base on history, and we're not going to go into that on this podcast because this is not that his history podcast where that dude drones on for 5 hours. I want first Roger to tell me, how does this benefit the United States? Like, boil it down. I mean, boil it down Barney style. How these agreements with these two countries, and hopefully more to follow, benefits the United States.
How does it not?
I love it. I love it.
You know what? There's two factors to this. Okay. There's obviously, the gorilla in the cage or in the room or whatever. Hey, there's this other country over there, right? What's the name of that? Starts with an I. Oh yeah. Iran. So I think, you look at state sponsored terrorism, and part of this is there are several different factors that go into this. You've got the whole Israeli Palestinian thing, that's been going on. You've got, what is this? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th, peace or whatever the hell you want to call it, accord that, in the history between the, Arab and the Arab world and the Israelis. But so there is a peace there with the Palestinians and the Israelis, which I think still run by the PLO, right? I mean, has that changed in the last several years? Maybe a little bit. But the bigger thing is, hey, you're putting pressure on fucking Iran. I mean, I always joke with Luke being a globalist because, and I say that, tongue in cheek, because we'll talk about things here in America. And then Luke wants to bring up some stupid shit about what they're doing in Slovenia, which nobody gives two fucks about because I live in Phoenix and could care less about what's going on in Slovenia. But in this case here, you're trying to build that coalition to put pressure on Iran, right? Because if, you remember like your whole back in the day, let's go back to the George Bush era, where you had your axis of evil and this and that. Well, when that axis of evil grows larger, there's a lot more support there. And so when you're trying to do anything, whether it's military operations or UN sanctions or anything else, diplomacy wise, hey, the more you're able to cut off those support lines, the more you're able to cut off, those other countries that might be backdooring, right? Sending gas in, sending fuel in, sending supplies, conducting trade, this and that. Sanctions only work if everybody gets involved. Sanctions don't work if you can't get the other countries involved with it. And so that's one issue there. Iran by itself, that should be enough said. If you don't get that point there, then you probably shouldn't fucking listen to our podcast because you're too goddamn stupid. So I'll tell you that right up front. And I don't want to sound like Josh with it, but that's the whole point of it, to me in my mind. The other piece that's really more bothering is actually the guy in his conversation, which, by the way, in all fairness, we did invite him to be on the podcast. And I think that was the last thing, right? Because he was like, hey, you talk a big fucking game, man. We got this podcast called Culper's Canteen Cup. Come on, playa. Show us what you're working with. And it was like, crickets. right?
Nothing. That was the last of it.
Yeah, they spew garbage. What kills me is how much that the media and other politicians are downplaying it. And I don't want to tie it all back to Trump, but that's what it is. They don't want to give the man credit for anything. And then even folks that are out there on social media that are like, well, I'm not left or right, I'm in the center. But, what's the first thing that came up on it was, well, there have been informal relations going on for years. Okay, that's great that you took that from the first sentence that was in fucking Wikipedia, because that's what came up. That's what happened. They went there, they gurgled it, said, huh? What? Well, first, let me find out where, the Middle East is and Bahrain. Where is that? Is that a country? It's a little kingdom, a little one, right? So they had to go find that shit on the map. Then they typed that, the Abraham Accord in there, and Wikipedia said, hey, informal relations have been going on for years. So that was the retort. Well, this has been going on. It's just not that big of a deal. If you don't, I'll throw it to Josh for his thoughts on it, because he tends to be a little more abrasive with it. But you are extremely obtuse if you don't see how it goes back to what we talked about 9/11. Okay. And I am telling you this now, I don't want to oversimplify it because there are a lot of other factors that went into it. You can trace 9/11 back to the 1976 Carter Doctrine and our show of force in the Middle East, period. Without their Carter Doctrine, there is no 9/11. Okay, I'm telling you that right now. Without us getting involved and dragging it, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. Okay, I don't want to. I know my tone may sound that way, but without us getting involved and backing the Mujahideen against the Soviets in Afghanistan, if that doesn't happen back in the 70s and 80s, 9/11 doesn't happen. So one of the other aspects, taking this back to Iran, is you're laying the groundwork to prevent another terrorist attack. Because here's the difference with Iran. They are a state. They are a sovereign nation. And we're not talking about, Al-Qaeda, ISIL, ISIS, AQM, all these other folks that struggle with resources, right? You're talking about a nation state here that has resources. They can carry out attacks. They have carried out attacks. They continue to carry out attacks. Not just against Americans, but against anybody who's against their interests, right? So you're looking at a lot more support. You're looking at a lot more logistics. You're looking at a lot more resources. So that's the number one thing, is you're laying the groundwork that, hey, you get these guys to the table. I would rather them sit there and yell at each other other than lob rockets at each other. I mean, to me, that is the whole point of it. I don't know, Josh. Am I missing something there, or am I being obtuse?
No, you're absolutely spot on with that, right? And so, and again, for the people who don't understand how and why this is a good thing, to put pressure on Iran, well, I tell you, let's go back to the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, right? Let's talk about Palestinian Hamas. Let's talk about Lebanese Hezbollah, right? All Iran funded. And I don't know if they were funded, part of that, they probably got some money when, I don't know, the last administration of Obama and Biden, Biden, that guy who's running for president, when they put a pallet full of cash and different currencies, on planes in the middle of the night and flew it to Iran. So some people will be like, well, that was Iran's money to begin with. Well, let me tell you something. If I owe somebody money and it turns out that they're a major terrorist sponsor who's killed Americans, guess what? I'm probably going to renege on that. I'm probably going to be like, bitch, come get your money. Come take it. Molan lay, bitch. Come take it. Let's see how bad you are. So, to Luke's point, the Palestinians are basically the gypsies of the Middle East, right? They're the Romas. No country wants them. Nobody, they're, at the end of the day, they're like, all right, they're Arabs, whatever. But nobody wants them. They're the gypsies. They are the gypsies of the Middle East, right? And so, but when you take a look at this, you think about it, there's only 4 countries total that recognize Israel as a state. And 2 of those just happened last week, right? So you've got the other 2 are Egypt and Jordan. Egypt recognized them in 1979. Jordan recognized them in 1994. All right. And it's also important to note that the person who engaged me on my Facebook post about this is Egyptian. So since 1979, their country has recognized Israel as a state. They're still upset about that, apparently. Right. And so a couple of other nuances about the Abraham deals. So it still has to be ratified by, the Israeli cabinet, which is they fully expect that it's going to be ratified. The other thing is that it specifically states, right, because there's always talk about the West Bank and the Golan Heights and Gaza and everything, and about there are absolutely some significant religious sites within Jerusalem for both Christians and Muslims. And one of the reasons Luke kind of touched on a little bit is about why Jerusalem and Israel is so prominent in the religion of Islam, is that the third holiest site in Islam is in Jerusalem. It's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, right? And so, supposedly that was the area, that was the mosque that Muhammad spoke at, and then he ascended, into heaven from the Jerusalem area, right? So it's the third holiest site in Islam. And so it's very important. So one of the things that this deal does, it says Israel agreed to, hey, Muslims are free to come and go to visit, the third holiest site in their religion, right? So, you oversimplify it. You're disingenuous. You're ignorant at worst, right? When you say that this is, a real estate problem that started in the 1940s. No, the fuck it didn't. Right. I don't know. Call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure I learned in Sunday school that Moses led the Jews out of Egypt, and he settled somewhere after his 40-year land navigation challenge. I think he settled somewhere in this place called Israel. I don't know. Call me crazy. So, to say that this just started in the 1940s is absolutely incorrect. It's not even remote to being closed. They're disingenuous. And you want to talk about the Palestinians. And I think that you go back and you look at U.S. policy, you go back even further than the Carter Doctrine, you go back and look, how many times has the U.S. government tried to get Israel and Palestine to sit down at the table? Every administration has tried it. Every single one. Every administration has failed epically because of, to get the Palestinian and Israelis at the same table for a duration of time to where they actually come to an agreement and a peace to where they recognize each other. It's just not going to happen. And so, the New York Times tweeted, can Jared Kushner, a 36-year-old person who just does real estate, what is he going to do? What problem is he going to solve? Well, he got two countries to recognize Israel, something that's never been done, ever, right? Other than Egypt and Jordan. So Obama couldn't do it in 8 years. Joe Biden, that guy running for president right now, he couldn't do it in 8 years. And all the years that he was in the U.S. Congress, he couldn't do it. So in comes Jared Kushner, and when the Trump administration looked at it and said, we don't have to get the Israelis and Palestinians to the table. We got to get the Israelis and other countries at the table, because eventually Palestine's going to take a look around and they're going to go, man, we don't have any more allies in the region. We don't have any more friends in the region. We don't have any other countries who say death to Israel in the region other than Iran, right? Which that's the company they keep anyway. So a marginalized Palestine, a marginalized Palestinian population, a marginalized Iran in the region is a good thing for every American on multiple levels. And for somebody who is from that region, who, claims to be, claims to be, I'm from the Middle East, whatever. If you don't understand that, one, you're ignorant at best, or two, you're seditious at worst. And so those two things, and for Nancy Pelosi to call him a distraction, what a cunt. Like, for real.
Of all the words that we've said, Josh went there. Yeah, and he was the first one dropped. And we haven't even talked about like the Syria piece, right? I mean, we haven't even talked about.
We haven't talked about the Syria piece.
We haven't even started pulling these threads where you talk about the Iranian influence and interference in the Syrian war, civil war, and then by the way, what's tied to that? Oh yeah, Russia. I mean, this thing is huge. It's like we haven't even gone down that road yet.
I think one one of the things that pissed me off the worst reading that, and that's why I just posted a sigh. Like I'm reading it and I'm like, it's not even worth it. And what pissed me off is when I said sigh was when he started talking down to everyone in the post who just doesn't understand how complex this is. There, with historical misunderstanding, it's like, that's one of my pet peeves is when someone very obviously from their very first post reveals their ignorance and then starts throwing it back on everyone else saying, no, you're the one that's ignorant. And, I'd love anyone who disagrees with this, with what we're saying, anything with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Middle East, come on the Facebook page and we'll have a good debate and then, back it up with facts and, all that stuff. But man, we're going to call you out and get a little bit pissed off when you start spouting this nonsense, and I see that more and more. I try to make these posts where someone hopefully will engage you. Maybe I'll learn something, and then I get bullshit in reply. Like the tweet I made about, hey people, it was on somebody's, I just saw a tweet and I replied, I was like, hey everybody, you guys know that Russia doesn't really care who wins the election, right? They don't care if Joe Biden wins. They don't care if Donald Trump wins. They're not like, they want to sow mistrust in the system. That's their goal. And we fall for it every time. And I thought that was just kind of like in the middle. I was like, hey, I'm not saying they want Trump or Biden to win. I'm saying they don't care. And I got I didn't get many comments, like 4 of people like, oh, you're just in the bag for Trump. Trump is bought and sold to Putin. And I replied back. I was like, hey, I'd love to see some facts on some sources. I'd love to see your sources on that, and then crickets, it's just, I hate it when people just turn off their brains and spout whatever they heard on the news or whatever they read on the far left or far right, thread that they follow. It's just, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And we do know Roger's point. If y'all really want to get into it, man, we'll start unweaving this carpet, this rug. I mean, this is some complex issues, very complex. We could go down the road on which Middle East countries we think would be next to sign this on, and we'll go down all the way to the ones we think would be last to sign on because of what that means for their particular countries, for their particular diaspora within the countries. Like Lebanon, oh my God, it would be suicide for them to sign on to this right now. They're not going to do it, but they might later on. And again, to Roger's point, putting pressure on Iran, I don't know if a lot of people understand that Arabs do not like Persians and vice versa. And that goes back further than Islam. I mean, that goes way back there.
I had somebody on Twitter, and I meant to tag you. I had somebody on Twitter when I said Arabs and Iran, right? Those are 2 separate groups, Arabs and Iran. Somebody came back and was like, they're Arabs. I was like, I was like, just stop talking right now. I was like, just stop talking. Don't say anything else because you automatically have shown your ignorance. They're not Arabs. Iranians are not Arabs. So just go ahead. As it says left, just get the fuck out. Just get the fuck out.
Koreans and Japanese. That's the same thing, Josh.
I actually can't believe that you called them Persians. I'm Persian. You're Iranian. I'm Persian. You're Iranian.
Dude,
I wish it would go back. I wish it would go back. You guys have probably met a few, like, I'm going to call them Persians. You've probably met a few, maybe, so westernized Persians, like, who came over back in the day. And I am telling you, after spending time on both sides of Persia, of Iran, I'll tell you that they are Muslim, but they are more compatible with Western ideals and Western values than I've seen on either side of them. So I'm saying Arabs, Afghans, they're compatible. And if you look back at the history of Iran, I mean, before, when the Shah was in power, I know with the Savak and all that, they did some horrible things. But man, Iran was a real player because they knew how to handle the Western world. They really did, because we had a lot in common back then, Lawrence of Arabia and all that stuff. I'm going way off here, but
Dude,
we can get into it. In other words, people, we can get into it, dude. Y'all want to challenge us and what we know and try to reveal what we don't? Bring it, man. We're ready.
Dude, we had the perfect opportunity in 2009 with the Iranian election protest. We had the perfect opportunity to go ahead, foment that, amplify that, and to regime change internally that would not have taken U.S. troops to go in and do that. The Iranian people are ready. Dude, Iranians, they want their Levi jeans, man. They want their discos. They are done, but they don't have a warm fuzzy that we will back them, right? And to our own fault in that, after they've seen what we've done with the Kurds and yeah, absolutely, right? But 2009 was a perfect opportunity. We completely screwed the pooch on that. Thanks, Obama. And then turn around, and the Arab Spring was a complete disaster. Anybody who thinks that was a good idea, take a look at Libya right now. Egypt's still a shit show. They're slowly coming on board, but they were on board a little bit before, right? Because again, the Egypt population, they love their Levi jeans, they love their discotheques, but we had the perfect opportunity to change Iran, and that would have changed the entire face of the Middle East. And we completely fucked it up.
And I think we were all certain, right? I was certain. I remember being at a hotel. I think we might have been on a mission somewhere together. Like, I was certain. I'm like, oh, here it comes. This bitch is about to drop, because I know we were involved in this, and regime change is about, I would have bet any amount of money on it. I'm just like, hey, just waiting, right? It's just, next thing you know, they're gonna be like, oh, it's fallen, and whatever. And it's just like crickets. I would have actually had some respect for Barry if that would have happened, because I legitimately, all three of us, right, legitimately expected that to happen. And then days went by, and I'm like, wow, of all the shit we get involved in, this is the one you need to be involved in. And it's, like you said, it's prime. These people are fucking ready. Crickets.
It was nothing, man. And you think that the CIA would have been all over that, and they weren't. They absolutely weren't. And who was the director of the CIA at the time? Who was that? Anybody know? What, John Brennan?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
They were all actually too busy when the news report came across Fox News. I actually have this image of like all of them sitting around pallets putting the dollar bills on there. And they're like, hey, something alert just came across Fox News. Huh? What's that? What? Protest going on? Huh? Where is that at? Iran? Oh shit. Just keep stacking, man. Just keep stacking dollar bills, y'all.
Yep. Massive protest, man. But they were they were stacking dollar bills they were stacking them into Destiny's G string at the strip club, bro.
So I think we've spent long enough on this distraction, because that's what it is. This Middle East piece is just a distraction.
Distraction from COVID.
Let's start talking about COVID. So I knew the other night, watching it wasn't the CNN town hall, it was the one a couple nights before, when Joe Biden spent an inordinate amount of time talking about how he doesn't trust a vaccine that comes from Trump. And I was like, I guess he doesn't trust a vaccine that comes from Trump before the election. I was like, oh, okay. So they're going to announce a vaccine before the election. I mean, that was my immediate thought. I'm like, okay, well, all right. I see the playbook. What do you think, Raj? You think there'll be a vaccine before the election? What will you take it?
I mean, one, I don't think I would take it because I don't think I'm high risk. So, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer. It's like flu, right? It's like the flu. And I know it's not the flu. It kills more people. Yeah, whatever. I wouldn't take it because I don't think I'm high risk. And even if I did have COVID, I think I'd recover from it pretty well, just like, whatever. However, I do think that those that are high risk probably do need to take the vaccine. But you know what? We called this thing weeks ago. Democrats are going to start laying the groundwork, because as a vaccine gets closer, because they're in the final stages of the clinical trials now. They're actually talking about, hey, we could actually be a couple weeks away from rolling out 100,000 of these things, and getting into some of the high risk folks. And you can't have that, during the election, right? If you're the Democrats, you can't have it. So what do? You start downplaying the vaccine. You got to lay that groundwork, because you can't start off up top and just say, no, we're not taking it. You got to lay the groundwork. Well, we don't want it rushed, and we got to make sure all the steps are being made, are being taken. And I think they've come out and said, hey, between the CDC and FDA and the Trump administration, obviously, has come out and said, hey, we've taken the necessary precautions. We haven't, we sped things up, not necessarily, I guess a better term would be we've prioritized it as opposed to speeding it up. You know, you want to make it sound like, oh, they took, cut corners or anything like that. They prioritized it, and that became the priority as opposed to going into the queue. But the Democrats have started laying that groundwork weeks ago because, hey, a vaccine comes out October, a week before the election, end of October, election's over. Call it a day. Biden will still get a lot of votes. Democrats, well, you could put a fucking, monkey up there and get half the votes of the United States, but the election's over at that point. I believe anyway. I think Trump wins that and probably bigger than what I think he's going to win it as it is. But as the Biden campaign, it's kind of funny, and even the left, you got to trust the science, man. Trust the scientists. The scientists have come out with a vaccine, not those scientists. Not that science, because you plant the seed, man, and water, and climate change is why those fires are going on out. You know what? Remember, and I know this is totally off topic. Remember, was it last year when Trump came out and said, and I get it, he obviously wasn't talking about a giant fucking rake, but hey, you guys should come up with some type of raking thing, deforestation, kind of clean this mess up. And he's stupid. And now half your fucking state's on fire, right? It goes, not to take away too much from the COVID thing, because we'll come back on that, because that whole thing still pisses me off. Even though during episode 2, I think I said I'm done talking about COVID, and here I am on episode 33 still talking about fucking COVID. So welcome to the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, month 6. But the media and Biden, Josh, can they be any wronger on anything else? I mean, can they be any more wrong on anything? I don't care if it's foreign policy. What are you going to do? Just wave a magic wand and bring jobs back? Yeah, actually, abracadabra, bitch. Look, it happened. What's Kushner going to do over there in the Middle East? Nothing's been done over. Oh yeah, well, that kind of happened too.
They couldn't be any more wrong on an absolute number of things, right? And so for those people, for the people out there listening, who may be thinking of, and I know earlier, I think I called you stupid. I think I called you ignorant. I stand by that. I don't retract that, right? I'm telling you right now, I don't retract that. But think about it. Are you better off? Think about it financially. Are you better off financially now than you were in 2009, 2010? Right? Are you better off now financially? I don't know. Are you better off now? You look at the people who continuously vote Democrat. Are those people better off now than they were, for the last 20 years? I don't know. You only you can answer that, right? Take a look at your bank account. Take a look at your 401ks. Take a look at your, your stock stuff. You figure that piece out. But for the COVID stuff, am I going to get the COVID vaccine? No, I'm not. I don't get a flu shot every year. Why? Because it makes me feel terrible for like 3 days afterwards. And I don't want to feel like dog shit afterwards, right? So am I going to get the COVID-19 vaccine? If there's one even before election day? No. If there's one a year from now, am I going to get it? Probably not. You know why? Because if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't, right?
You're not high risk.
I'm not high risk. And that's the thing. It's like I can look at it and choose to say, you know what? I don't think I need it. I didn't think I needed, you go back to like our time in the, in the Army was, dude, how many shots and shit did we get? I was just, smallpox, yellow fever, anthrax, all the anthrax, and it's not, it's like, guys, it is unnecessary, completely unnecessary. I'm absolutely not an anti-vaxxer, right? I'm absolutely not an anti-vaxxer. You have kids, your kids should get vaccinations. Your kids should get, measles, mumps, rubella, like all those vaccines, your kids should actually get those. But I'm a fucking grown man. Am I going to get the flu shot this year? Nope. I didn't get it last year. I didn't get it the year before that. I think I skated out with my MetPros being red for a very long time. Even though people were like, "Hey, you're red on MetPros. You need to go get your flu shot." Be like, "Yep, right on it. I'll go. Yep, absolutely." Sorry, man, I was TDY. Sorry. Oh, look, flu season's over. Guess I'll get it next year. Right? It's just I won't get it. And it's not because I don't believe the science behind it. I'm not high risk, and I am strong enough that I will fight it off. And you know what? And maybe I'll look like an asshole if COVID-19, does get me and it kills me. Then you know what? Whatever, dude. Then you guys can all make fun of me. I'll be dead. I won't give a shit. So I don't buy into all of it. And you talk about how the media won't give any credit for anything. Trump, one of the biggest things I've heard for the last 10 years was the cost of insulin, right? The cost of insulin for diabetics was through the roof. And I agree, man. I hate the drug companies. I think they're a bunch of vultures, but the U.S. government is complicit in that. And the U.S. government is complicit in that because of the rules they have. We don't have completely socialized healthcare. We don't have completely free market healthcare. We have this hybrid of socialized and privatized, and it's constantly at battle with each other. And dude, you think the politicians, you think the people in Congress aren't making money off this shit? I'm telling you right now, you're high. You're high AF. Trump signed that bill to lower insulin. Dude, now, and I know two people personally, their insulin bill a month went from $200 to $30 a month. $30 for insulin, right? That shit wasn't in the news. That was not in the news. And people always, that's one of the biggest things. Bernie Sanders talks about it all the time. The healthcare companies are making millions, and the American people, healthcare, is a riot. And dude, you think Bernie came out and was like, that was a great thing that Trump did, was get insulin costs down for people? Nope, motherfucking crickets. Dude, that guy could pull kids out of a burning vehicle, administer CPR to them, and resuscitate them and save their life, and people would accuse him of being a pedophile. I'm telling you, dude, it would absolutely happen. And it's disgusting.
That's a nice deflection, but it sounds to me like you and Roger want Gam to die because you won't get the vaccine, and you're science deniers.
No, man, I'm not Kumo. I'm not gonna kill Gam.
So
Kumo's gonna kill Gam because Kumo did kill Gam.
Yeah, with the COVID vaccine, I don't know. I to answer my own question, I threw at you guys. If they offered it to me, at the medical, jeez Louise, man. So it's been the old Forrester talking this whole time. That's great. So no, if the health unit here said, "Hey, we're giving out flu or COVID shots," I'd go get it. You know why? Because I'm sick of this bullshit. It's like I'm fucking sick of it. Hey, Luke, why are you walking around here without your mask, bitch? Because I have the COVID vaccine. Like, I'm so tired of this, man. I literally can't do my job because of this COVID nonsense. In my opinion, I don't know this, but the organization I work for as a whole, the department, the gears are starting to grind. It's starting to be metal on metal, and things are starting to slow down more and more and more. Processes that used to take 3 or 4 days are now taking literally 3 or 4 weeks. And that is, that's anecdotal, I guess, but things are starting to grind now, and it's time to get the fuck back to work. So that's my thing. I think it's a genius move. If Trump is gonna, if the administration leaked the fact that a vaccine might be out, it puts the other side on their heels. If a vaccine does come out, I think that's it's a good thing. We need to get those at-risk populations vaccinated. That's kind of how I feel about it. One last thing: debates or no, Roger. 12 days, I think. 11, 12 days.
Yep, absolutely. Debates, they have to happen. They have to happen. And it's kind of crazy because I've been talking to a bunch of buddies about the debates. And I do believe this is make or break for both candidates. So historically, for the incumbent, the first debate, the incumbent generally loses that debate. Because now Trump's a lot different though, but most incumbent presidents, they've been the president, they've been there for 3 years, and it's really hard to turn that up during a debate and really get everybody fired up. And so they think they did well, and then when they come back and see the after action report, they're like, you actually didn't do so well on that. And the contender normally has to come out there and really just, hey, this is why I'm running for president. I think that's going to change a lot. But here's what I do think is going to happen, or I don't know, I guess a couple different options. The bar is set, like we've said for a while, the bar is set very low for Joe Biden. And I think most people have already decided. I just don't believe there are that many undecided voters out there. I think they already know. It's like, I'm a Trump supporter, I'm a Biden supporter, or I'm not a Trump supporter, or I'm not a Biden supporter. So there's a big difference, because right now all you're seeing is, orange man bad, everybody hates Trump, but nobody's given one reason to go vote for Biden at all. So I think what the Democratic base is looking for is if Joe Biden gets up there and can actually put together 4 or 5 coherent sentences together and not drool all over his tie, then Democrats will say that could fire up his base. That could give him enough to actually win. You take a state like Arizona, that's purple, probably leaning a little blue. That could actually push a state like Arizona to being an actual blue state, where you have those Democratic voters that like, I don't like Trump. I may not necessarily get out and vote for Biden. I may just not vote, because you got to remember, during the 2016 election turnout, just over half of registered voters turned out to vote. So it wasn't a very high population. So I think Democrats are really, really sitting there waiting for this thing, because if he comes out and he does a good job, and not even a good job, if he just doesn't drool on himself, that'll fire that base up to come out and vote for him. He comes out and does whatever he was doing with the chicken poop and that stuff that Josh was playing, and then planting the seeds and all that stuff. That could be the beginning of the end for him. I think that's where that could go. So I think debates do happen. I think they happen in person. I think the first one, if I'm not mistaken, is the one with Chris Wallace, which should be a good one, because he's generally pretty straightforward. He's generally a pretty hard hitter. I forget who the other 2 debates are with, but it will definitely be something a lot different than what we've seen with the softball questions that were given to him during the town hall. So I don't know, Josh, what do you think?
I mean, I'm still going with, they're not going to let Joe Biden get on a debate stage with Trump in a live debate. They're going to come up with, there's going to be some excuse that they're going to keep him getting on a debate stage. It's going to be COVID-19. It's going to be Joe's not feeling well. It's going to be something, because, love him or hate him, Donald Trump knows how to get under people's skin. He is going to get under Joe Biden's skin in about 30 seconds, and Joe Biden is going to turn into a blubbering mess. He is going to turn in, the thing, the thing. Right. And it's just going to be a disaster for Joe Biden. I don't think the live debates happen. That's my prediction. And a couple other thoughts before you hand it over to Luke, and before we close this thing out, real quick, it's POW MIA Day. So shout out to the POW MIA Command out in Hawaii, who those men and women out there spend their days sweating their asses off in the jungles of Southeast Asia and all over the world, trying to repatriate the remains of our fallen and our missing. So I can't think of a more honorable profession within the military than that right there. So shout out to them for all they do. Shout out to my buddy who's not going to listen to this podcast, because he said he doesn't listen to the political ones, but he does listen to our non-political ones. He lives up in Fargo, so big shout out to him. Appreciate you listening. And hey, for the 8 people in the last couple of days that bought the book from Bucky Calhoun and AJ Todd, Hey, we really appreciate it. Really appreciate your support. We really appreciate your support in All Secure. Do us a favor, head over to their website, allsecure.org. Take a look at Tom Satterley's book, All Secure, and take a look at his wife's Jen's book as well. It's a pre-order on Amazon right now, but it's her perspective on the things that she's gone through and the experiences she's had, and in being married to Tom and dealing with everything that comes with that. So, but yeah, man. Other than that, I don't have anything else. But Joe Biden does not see a live debate stage with Donald Trump.
And I did on your thing real quick, and something before I turn it back over to Luke. Everybody forgets what happened in what was it, 2018? I think we got back 200 soldiers from North Korea, right? That was done under President Trump's administration.
Yep.
Something else that again, very little credit. And I remember even the media saying, "Well, do we really know those were Americans?" And this, hey, motherfucker, you know what? They're coming back with a flag over the casket. That's the side. I'll give them benefit of the doubt on that. So sorry, Luke, I cut you off. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. Well, speaking of okay, first I'll address the debate piece. I'm going to side with Josh on this. I hope I'm wrong. I'll say it again. I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to side with Josh and say there will be no live face-to-face debates. It's suicide. Even if they are in remote locations, it's still not going to be a good look. And again, a person is stupid, but people are smart. And I think that voters, if Joe debates Trump, it's going to be a bad look. So that's my prediction. Still 12 days out. A quick shout out. Speaking of the POWMIA command, buddy that listens to this, Scott, he did some work with them. He was in the Army Medical. I think he did some work in Vietnam, Cambodia, maybe back in the day. But Scott reached out to me, and Scott, I know you're listening. From now on, man, just post on the page, bro. You don't have to message me. Post on the page or get a Twitter. I think Scott got rid of his Facebook, but figure out a way to give us some likes or something on our Facebook page. But Scott reached out to me, and he wants to do his own little Battle of the Bulge, and starting now. So it's going to be 90 days from now. He's challenged himself to lose 20 pounds. So Scott, we're going to need photos of that, your weight when you start, and then 90 days from now, and meet your goal. And I will personally send you some Culper's Canteen Cup swag. And I encourage anybody else who wants to do that, man, just let us know, man. We'll give you a shout out. And I mean, Josh and I feel better. We're glad we did it. And I think we're still on the wagon with staying in shape and stuff. And I'm sore as hell, man. I've been hitting the gym. I'm really sore, but it feels good. So, shout out to Scott, and we'll be keeping track of that and updating the audience on his progress, maybe get him on the show one of these days.
All right. So for all of our listeners out there, again, we say it every episode, but we truly mean it. Thanks for listening to us, especially to take an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever the length is out of your week to watch us or listen to us. It's incredibly humbling. As always, big shout out to Carlton Zeus, carltonzeus.com. Check him out on Apple Music, some pretty badass music. And before everybody keeps their canteen cups tightly secured and we kick it to the freemium content, I did find the Joe Rogan quote for you, so I'll end it on this before we start it. I fucked up on the podcast with Douglas Murray and said that people got arrested lighting fires in Portland. That turned out not to be true. I was very irresponsible, not looking into it before I repeated it. I read one story about a guy getting arrested for lighting fires, and then he gets into it. It was really fucking stupid mistake. That won't happen again. I'm sorry. So basically, Joe Rogan just turned into a big pussy, and hopefully somebody will get that to him because Culper's Canteen Cup would love to be on the experience. So, hey, for all you YouTube watchers out there, your freemium content starts now. Hey, maybe we'll get called out, man. Maybe Joe Rogan, he'll be like, did these guys just call me pussy?
Dude, I can't believe that Joe Rogan sold out like that, man.
I can't believe he said that tweet. It's like, dude, I can go back a year ago. You were saying some outlandish shit about out-of-body experiences and stuff when you took Atahuska and wherever. It's like, really?
And that's the thing, man. And you hit it on the head, man. It's one of the things, like, I don't always agree with everything that Joe Rogan says, but Joe Rogan, he's a very common sense person, right? And he's willing to hear everybody. Like, he's willing to have a conversation with everybody whether he agrees with him or not. And so that was one of the main reasons why I respected him. And he spoke his mind, right? And for him to come out and do that, dude,
I guess
I'm done with
I'm
Joe
just
Rogan.
like my dad. I guess I'm just like my dad when I, whatever I did, dude did something stupid back in the day when, it's like, I'm so disappointed in you and it hurt, and I'm just disappointed. I understand why Joe Rogan does what he's doing right now, because you're talking about a lot of money, but I guess I gave him more credit in my mind that he would negotiate his contract better so he could stay true to who I thought he was. It's like, dude, I mean,
No way.
You completely sold out, bro.
You got to remember, they're a publicly traded company now. You've got shareholders to answer to.
I know.
I mean, there's only going to be, again, it's Howard Stern 2.0. There's only a certain amount of flexibility that legal team was going to give Joe Rogan. And it started off right off the bat and I think you called it weeks ago when this all happened, when, hey, his controversial episodes weren't put on there. And that right there should tell you where that was going. That right there should tell you where it was going.
But it's going to crash. If he keeps acting like this, he's going to lose a sizable portion of his audience. And what Spotify was betting on was that the entire audience would come over with him and they would take a sizable chunk out of iTunes market when it comes to podcasts. They were going to build their ship around Joe Rogan. And man, it might work out, it might, but fuck, man, I'm not going to take time out to listen to him anymore. I mean, unless he hosts the debate, I'll listen to that. But let's be honest, man, neither one of those guys could make it through a 4-hour debate. They're not with Joe Rogan, because man, that's tough, man.
I think Trump could. Trump's been, I tell you what, when you look at his last couple of press conferences, this and that, and the one that we were chatting about, I mean, he's looking good. And a lot of that, Dana Perino hit it up today. She said he's out there for hours a day doing this. He is in prep mode. So he wants to get out there. He wants the hard questions. It's practice, right? It's practice. You get out there and you do this every day, and you do it for 2 or 3 times a day. You do it for an hour, 2 hours a piece. Hey, man, there's nothing that moderator is going to throw at you that you haven't heard before. Whereas with Joe, if you're not out there speaking every day, and even what God, I mean, it's a no-win situation, because if you're his handler, you're like, fuck no, that guy can't go out there and speak. And then, but then you need to have him out there to speak, because one, you need to have him visible, and he needs to practice. It was like the one thing that Josh posted, I think, with I carry this around with me every day. Well, I don't have it with me. Right. I gave it to my staff.
Yeah. It's his notebook that he's quote unquote carried for 14 years or something like that.
The next night, he actually had it. Said, I carried this with me every day for 14 years. Well, no, because you didn't have it the other day. So there's another lie for you.
Yeah, you didn't have it yesterday. It was like, where did I put it? Dude, I tell you what, man, and I didn't realize. So if you would not have said that, Luke, about Joe Rogan, I would never realize that Spotify didn't carry over all his content. They
did, but they chose not to put it out.
I'm done with Joe Rogan.
Right?
I'm serious, man. Like, I'm serious. Like, so I go back and forth, right? I'm like, one day I'm like, I need to be a little more understanding. I need to, give people grace.
Oh, no. Fuck that.
Right? Because I'm a failing Christian. I try and okay, I'm going to give people grace, and everything. And then the next day I'm like, fuck those people. Let's burn it down. Let's burn it all down.
Because what happens is
nobody's getting grace.
What happens is you get the post on, well, how does that benefit me as an American? That's what does it. You try to be reasonable, right? And you try to sit there and you banter and, hey, maybe I'll learn something and this and that. But then you get some dickhead that gets on there and is like, well, how does the Abraham Accord, how does that, benefit me as an American? That's like, and that's when you just fucking fly off at the handle. You're like, you're just a fucking moron.
It absolutely kills me, man. It absolutely kills me. It's like, it's like trying to reconcile. So, what was it? A couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Pol Pot's chief executioner died, right? He was, he might died of old age or cancer or whatever.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is that if you're a believer and you go to church, that guy's going to heaven. because he was a born again Christian. He was baptized. He, repented. You're like, that guy's going to heaven. You're like, well, fuck, man. If that, you're just thinking, you're just like, I got all these fucking people out here. You're like, maybe I need to be a little more understanding. Maybe I need to have a little more grace. But because my first thought when I saw that, I was like, fuck that dude. I'm glad that dude's dead. Right. And then you realize, you're like, oh shit, that dude got baptized. That dude's going to heaven. Like, holy shit. Like, dude.
I guess better pay Columbia Records back.
Dude, I don't know that I ever paid Columbia Records back. Dude, so I got Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, and some other, CDs when I did the Columbia Records thing. And I remember my mom heard me listening to them one time and Use Your Illusion 2. And she was like, get that Satan music out of my house. And it was, and so I saw the Columbia Records thing, and Columbia Records was my introduction to Satan. So, yeah, it was banana. I saw that. I was like, I got to post this. It's got to get posted.
Yeah, that's classic, man. I did the same thing. I think I got my CDs, and I moved out of the place where I was living. Is when I was in college. I moved out of the place, and then I heard nothing from them ever again. And I was like, well, skated out of that one. And, yeah, the joke's going to be on me when I get a $80,000 bill from Columbia Records because of all the interest or whatever. Like,
well, that's what it is. What's going to happen is one of our listeners out there is like, an old ass stockholder or executive or know somebody or whatever. Like, hey, you know what? There are a lot of motherfuckers out there that didn't return their fucking, or didn't rewind their Blockbuster fucking videos and their Columbia CDs and this and that. And next thing you know, we're all going to get fucking bills for, $5 million in late fees and penalties or, whatever. But that was actually pretty funny. So I think what I'm going to do now is, get back on Twitter. I need to build up my followers a little bit. I need to get involved in this. I think that might be my new platform since Parler's fucking, burning to the ground. But for all you YouTube viewers out there, hey, appreciate you watching. We know it's a solid 2 hours. I can't believe we actually had the viewership that we do, because we get, it looks like we're getting about 30, 40 people that view this stuff every week, every 2 weeks, something like that. And we really don't push the YouTube stuff, but I do get it, because I guess with the YouTube, people want to kind of see us, see the personalities, and if we really look as fucked up as what we sound. So thanks for watching us, just like the listeners out there, and stay safe and keep your canteen cups tightly secured.